Hey everybody, welcome to Tone Wars. I'm here with my buddy Jay, and we are going to compare his amp, which is the Revv Generator 120 Mark II, compared to the new Revv Generator 120 Mark III. And we're going to see how they are the same, maybe, and how they differ. Okay, so Jay came over a few hours ago, and we set everything up, and he dialed in the Mark III to his taste. So what we're going to do now is compare them channel for channel and show you how different they are, and we're going to get his thoughts on how they differ and maybe how they're the same as well, because how long have you had your amp?
Got it in October of 2016.
Oh wow, dude, you've had it a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're super familiar with that amp, and it's your favorite amp.
Yeah, that purple channel is like, it's that situation when you know you found your sound.
Yeah.
Every other amp that I have, and I think I have 4 other amps, no matter what other flavors I have, that is my channel.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep, that's your channel. So I want to see like how how it differs from the purple channel on the new one, which is the Mark III, and get your thoughts on it. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and do a back and forth between them, and we're going to use the KHE amp switcher to do this. I tell you, if you guys got multiple amps and you don't have a KHE amp switcher, you're freaking nuts. This is by far one of the best gear purchases I think either one of us have ever made, right?
Yeah, I picked one up, I don't know, maybe a few months ago.
Yeah.
And it's just made playing, way more fun, being able to A/B things. And yeah, it's been an awesome gear purchase for me. I got mine a few months ago, and for me what's great about it is like that purple channel, like I was saying, is my favorite channel. Now I can kind of compare it to my other amps, and because when you know what your favorite channel is, sometimes you have a tendency to dial in every amp to try and get that thing when your other amps do different things, so having the ability to A/B things really quickly with no delay, not having to unplug anything, all that crap, it just make my whole workflow way more efficient.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is amazing, and I just thought I'd give them a little shout out in the video here because they're an amazing company and they make great gear. So, and without that piece of gear, we couldn't do the shootout.
Yeah.
It'd be a nightmare without it. So, all right. So again, starting with yours, which is the Mark II, I'm going to switch back and forth while you're playing the same riff, and pay attention to the settings and the names on the screen, and you'll see which one he's playing and hear how they differ, or maybe how they're the same. So 1 second. Okay, so that was, dude, that was cool. I mean, hearing all the different riffs. I love how you mixed it up with some different riffs and stuff. So two things, like, could you tell when I switched how it felt, or more with your ears, or both?
I'd say they felt pretty similar to me. They didn't really feel all that different. I'm so used to mine, I could tell when it was on mine.
Okay.
Mine has a little bit more sizzle to it, at least the way they're dialed in. I find that when we switched to mine, it almost sounded a little bit more metal to me because it had that cut and it had that sizzle to it.
Okay.
The low end is more prominent on the Mark III to me.
Okay.
It seems a little bit fuller and a little bit darker.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I noticed about the Mark III version too with the purple channel is that I also felt like, when I'm doing all the fast stuff, I could feel the notes underneath me a little bit easier. It almost felt like I almost felt like I could keep going faster and faster because I could hear, all the separation. Whereas with my amp, it's almost more I just have to kind of trust myself, like I'm holding it together. Whereas with the Mark III, it just felt more. I don't know if I would say articulate because they both sound articulate to me, but it just felt a little bit easier to do the real fast stuff with the Mark III.
So you're talking like it felt easier with your hands.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with your ears, you heard. So could you hear the articulation differences between the two, or are they too close, or?
Yeah, it is pretty close because really what I might think is more articulate about my amp is just that sizzle.
Yeah.
And I can hear the top end. I can hear some of the detail and some of that gristle,
Yeah.
With the Mark III, it was more just I could feel the air like coming from the speakers. I could feel it just felt a little bit easier and more comfortable to play the real fast stuff on the Mark III.
And the thing is and I'm going by memory because I played your amp over a year ago, I think, or at least right around a year ago, right?
2 or 3, maybe 1 or 2 years ago.
1 or 2 years ago, yeah. So I'm kind of going by memory because honestly, I haven't played his amp yet because we didn't want to touch the settings that you had on it until it was my turn to compare them. So just adjusting my pack here. Okay. So basically, if memory serves me correctly, the Mark II wasn't as chewy as the Mark III. Maybe that's what it is, and I like chewy amps, it's kind of what I go after. There's a little more chewiness to the Mark III than the Mark II. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's better. It really depends on what you like. I mean, there's people that are like, I want an amp that's a little stiffer, and not so chewy. So it really depends on what you like. And I agree with you as far as what I heard. I could hear that sizzle, I could hear that bite that the Mark II has over the Mark III. It's not like a huge difference, but it is noticeable.
Yeah.
It's subtle but noticeable, and I do like it. I think it sounds great. And the thing is, though, is that's as bright as I think an amp should be.
Yeah.
I mean, so they couldn't on the Mark III make it brighter. Like, why would you? It's like staring at the sun.
So one thing I noticed on the Mark III is that the bright switch is on. We had that dialed in, whereas with my amp, the Mark II, I don't really use the bright switch on channel 3, the purple channel.
Okay.
Because to your point, it's a little too much.
Yeah.
It's a little too bright. I'd rather take the presence or the treble and kind of mess with that a little bit. Or sometimes if I'm using an overdrive, we weren't using an overdrive for the stuff that we've done so far. I think the bright switch is too much for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, on the Mark II.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. So that's a testament to how bright that amp is in comparison to the Mark III. And again, why go brighter on the Mark III? I mean, you would think that if anything, they probably would go a little darker and then give you that bright switch if you want a little more, of that bite. And I think that they dialed it in really well as far as how it was voiced. And honestly, the values on the knobs are different. They're a little different,
Yeah, I tried dialing them in very similar, just looking at the Mark III and like, okay, well, this is usually where I have, the mid treble bass and
Hmm.
setting it up that way. And I noticed right off the bat when we were, comparing them, again, using the KHE, you're able to go back and forth
Yep.
and see that, yeah, these two amps are not, it's not
Not
the
the same.
same.
Yeah.
And the aggression, like using aggression level 1, the blue aggression setting on the Mark II, that's the sweet spot for me. I really like that setting.
Hmm.
Did the same thing, with the Revv, kind of messed with the aggression level, and I think that's on the red right now, from what I
Yeah.
can tell.
Yep.
And I found that on my amp, on the Mark II, the red aggression level is a little too much, whereas on yours, felt like almost kind of I needed to put it on that red to get that little more of that sizzle out of it,
Hmm.
to try and
Got ya.
somehow match it a little bit closer. But
Yeah.
it's different. I was kind of expecting them to be a little bit further apart than what they are. It was
I
actually,
was too.
yeah,
Yeah. On these two channels, I was expecting them to be, a couple miles apart, not 1,000, but a couple. They're pretty close, but there is a difference. And I'm just talking about what I'm hearing because I haven't played them back to back yet. But from what I'm hearing, I think if you want more of the, that bite and that sizzle, the Mark II might work better for you. But I'm not saying that the Mark III doesn't have any. It's there. It's just not as prominent as the Mark II.
you might have to do some different things to get there
Yeah.
on that amp versus
Maybe boost your
yeah.
highs on your pedal, your overdrive pedal, or the thing is though is because the knobs are the values on the knobs are different. I mean, we tried that. We tried pushing the presence, and he was immediately like, "Oh, nope, turn that down. It's
Well,
too
and,
much."
and the cut setting too, which the Mark II doesn't have
Yeah.
the cut. It has a contour switch,
Mhm.
but it doesn't have a cut. And I felt when I was dialing in the Mark III that I had to have the cut switch engaged.
Yeah, there's
But
more mids in the Mark III.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it because I feel like there's more, a little bit more beef, a little bit more low end
Yeah.
on the Mark III. That
Yep.
cut is necessary to kind of rein it in to the point where I can do all my fast picking stuff
Yeah.
and feel the notes without them starting to,
Run into each other.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now that we've compared the purple channel on both amplifiers without the overdrive, let's go ahead and turn on the overdrive now and do the same thing and then compare them with the pedal on. Today's pedal is going to be the DAE Duality DX, and this is going to be on the blue channel. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that now, starting with the Mark II. Okay, now with the pedal, I'm just talking audibly. I'm listening, to what the mics are picking up here. I heard a bigger difference between the amps with the pedal on. Am I right or?
Yeah, I did hear a difference. I
Yeah.
almost felt like the overdrive for the Mark II, almost was overkill on the brightness for
Yep.
me.
Yep.
So, and I'm at my house and I'm dialing things in a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I've got, a different cab sitting in front of me,
Yep.
pointing in a different direction.
Yep.
All things considered, I did hear the difference, but I wouldn't say like the way everything is set up right now may be exactly how I set up at home.
Yeah.
So it probably wouldn't be that bright because I do use that exact pedal
Hmm.
at home, and it's doesn't sound quite as bright at home. At
but
home.
here- Yeah, this room's different. I mean, that's the thing that Steve Shaheen, whenever he comes over here, he's like, dude, your room like reveals everything. Like when I bring an amp over there, it's like I'm hearing things that I don't hear at home. And there's just something about this room and the reflections here that are just different. And it's pretty typical. You know, it happens everywhere. So yeah, I noticed that. We'll get to how they felt in a second here, but I noticed, at least in my in-ears, what I was hearing was the Mark III sounded, again, a little darker, but it had that perfect amount of sizzle to it where it wasn't too much. And did it sound fuller to you? It sounded fuller in my in-ears. You're the in the room guy. I'm the in-ears guy right now.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. I
mean, chunkier.
I think what's happening is with that overdrive, it's tightening up that lower end, and it probably doesn't really need to be tightened up anymore on the Mark II.
Yeah.
You know, where it's kind of just taking what that cut switch is doing on the Mark III and just kind of pushing it even further, making it even more responsive, you know.
It could be, because the Mark III so far in my ears, and I think that you mentioned, it has more low end. It's just a little more low end. The thing that I like about what they did with it, though, is they didn't make it tubby and say, well, oh, you want more end? Here's a big flat or a big fat low end bottom gooey amp. I mean, they just gave you a little bit more, an appropriate amount, like another scoop, another scoop of low end.
Yeah, and the thing is, the bass settings are, you know, pretty similar on both amps. So I mean, just setting it up a very similar way, you know, you can hear the difference.
All right, so now we're on the red channel on both amps with the overdrive off, and we're going to go back and forth and see what you think, how these two compare. Here we go. So thoughts on the red channels without the overdrive?
Yeah, I like the red channel better on the Mark III. I'm such a fan of the purple channel that you know, dialing in the red channel for me is a little bit different because I tend to kind of experiment a little bit more with it. So I don't know that I've ever truly found a home with the red channel as far as the setting that I'm like, okay, no matter what, wherever I go, whatever room I'm in, this is what the setting I'm gonna use. Today, dialing in the red channel here, I got a sound that I was pretty happy with. I was pretty good with it. Not to say that I don't love the red channel on the Mark II, but it's just not quite home as much for me as the purple channel is. What I noticed with the red channel on the Mark II compared to the Mark III is that it's not quite as beefy. Again, kind of the same story as the purple channel comparison. It's not quite as throaty. It's not quite as just thick on the bottom end.
Gotcha.
And I also found that the red channel on the Mark III seemed to be a little bit, you know, feel a little bit better for me too.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, just
really?
yeah, just again, like I felt all the fast stuff was really just easier to play.
So you felt more supported with it?
Yeah, I would
more
say
confident.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, when we were dialing in the red channel on both amps, I actually had an easier time dialing in the red channel on the Mark III as opposed to the Mark II.
It didn't take you long. No. I mean, you dialed it in probably less than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You were like, okay, I'm good with this. And then we had dinner. You're like, leave it, you know. So,
yeah, it sounded good really quickly.
Interesting.
Like, yeah, with the Mark II, I can get it where I'm happy with it, but I just have to fiddle a little bit more with it, you know, because for me, like you heard, I played a slower tune, like a slower riff, like more just grimy, you know, gristly, thick stuff. And at a slower tempo, and then I played the fast stuff. And that's what I love about this amp, is that I can get away with both of those two different things with the same channel and the same amp.
Yeah.
But this one, for me, was a little bit, I felt a little bit more supported, and it just sounded a little bit chunkier.
Okay, yeah, it definitely, I think they both sounded great because again, I'm the in-ears, I'm listening to the mic, same thing you guys are listening to right now, and he's listening in the room. So, yeah, I mean, I thought they both sounded great in here, but it really depends on, what you're hearing. And the thing is, I think your opinion matters more right now than mine would, because most of the time when we're playing through our amp, we're listening to it in the room. We're not using in-ears and mics, I mean, that's really rare. So yeah, I definitely value your opinion over mine right now, depending on, based on how these sound, because again, it's, just this in-ears thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn on the overdrive pedal and compare both channels really quick. And again, we're using the Duality DX blue setting on there. So let's go ahead and do that now. And here we go. Starting with the Mark II. Okay, so what were you hearing between the two with the overdrive pedal?
Very similar thing as what I said with the purple channel. It is just a little bit more brighter, or a little bit brighter than what I would really want. It's just it was a little bit, almost to the point where it was, where I felt like I would have had to go and turn something down a little bit. So I would say that for me, on my amp, on my Mark II, I don't really know that I would use an overdrive, at least with the settings that we're messing with today.
Yeah.
On the red channel.
Okay.
I think it's fine without it.
Gotcha. And what pickups are you using, just so everybody knows?
These are Fishman Fluence active pickups, and this is the Kill Switch Engage model.
Okay, just so everybody knows. Okay, so it seemed to add too much top end, you think?
Yeah, it was a little too bright for me.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely a brighter amp, know. And to be fair, every time you take your amp in a different room, that's why they have knobs. You're going to have to tweak it for the room, because the reflections actually can add brightness, or whatever. So the reflections in this room just happen to do that, apparently. So that could be part of it. So what you guys are hearing on the mics might not necessarily reflect what Jay's hearing in the room. How did it feel? Was it a difference in feel, or is it they feel about the same?
Once we threw that overdrive on, they felt pretty similar to me.
Okay.
I really didn't notice a big difference in feel with the overdrive on.
All right.
And I think it's just the overdrive doing its job.
Yeah. So. Well, overdrives are the great equalizer. They they really take just about any amplifier and just make it workable for you, even if it is a kind of a, and not to say these are, but if you get a really dull, flubby, lifeless amp, slam it with an overdrive and it's like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
It just becomes a completely different amp at that point. So now let's get really interesting and go, I'll turn the overdrive pedal back off, and now we're going to go to the green channels and see what that's like, because I think that's where things are going to get really interesting. All right, so now let's go ahead and turn the overdrive pedal off and go to the green channel on both amps and see how they compare. This one's going to be really interesting, because I think this is where the amps are going to be miles apart from each other if memory serves me properly. So we'll see. So we're going to go ahead and start with the green channel on the Mark II and switch back and forth between it and the Mark III. Okay, so pretty big difference between the two. So what did you notice? Again, the overdrive pedal's off. So what did you notice big time between them?
Well, obviously, I'm not going to play like the really fast stuff with that channel, so that's why I didn't do that. Normally with the green channel, it would be, you know, just big open chord things, you know, rock and roll type stuff. But I wanted to kind of try to stay true to the, you know, same kind of riffs we were doing on the purple and the red channel. I think it's pretty obvious, dude. I mean, like the Revv Mark III is just the gain on tap on that green channel is just way more than what you have on the Mark II, and it was designed that way. I mean, they decided to go in a different direction. Yeah. You know,
and it seems more compressed as well. There's a little more compression where the green channel on the Mark II is a little more open. Am I right?
I think so. That way? Yeah, I think so.
A little more open. And how did they feel, I mean, between the two as well?
The green on the Mark III felt better to me. It felt more supported. It just it felt a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more responsive to the playing. You know, clear. It was clear to me.
Okay.
You know?
Interesting. A lot of times with a compressed amp, you lose a little bit of clarity to get that compression. And that's not a bad thing because, you know, depending on how well you play, obviously things will come out clearer or not. But compression definitely does kind of glue things together a little. But I think they compressed it in a way where you still retained the clarity, but still got that really nice, thick kind of attack. And it's kind of beefy, you know. That's why I always prefer, you know, compressed amps over open amps, because open amps, they're kind of airy sounding, and there's just a lot of space in between the notes, and you know what I mean. It's kind of hard to explain, but like an open amp is kind of like a giant hula hoop of sound coming at you, where a compressed amp is more of a brick wall coming at you. You know what I mean? It's not as airy. There's just this thick wall coming at you of sound. You know, and that's kind of what the difference is with me. So as long as you articulate your notes properly, you're fine. But it's interesting that you said that. You know, that you notice more clarity even though it's compressed.
It just seemed like it had a little bit more sparkle to it, a little bit more chimey. You know.
Okay.
You know, right off the bat, even though we were playing with higher gain settings, and it was more crunchy. That crunch had like a really nice, real nice sparkle to it. You know, just really, just cuts really well, but it wasn't like piercing. It wasn't hurting my ears or anything.
Yeah.
I felt like, you know, with the Mark III version of the green channel, I could do a lot more with it.
Okay.
You know, I could back it down. I could get more of a pedal platform channel type of thing, throw an overdrive in it, kick up the drive on it, and do some things with it.
Yeah.
You know, if I want to, but for the Mark II version, you would definitely have to throw an overdrive in front of it and, you know, put some drive on it to even come close to what the Mark III is doing.
Yeah, it just sounds to me like the Mark II is a step over Edge of Breakup. You know, it's just a step over the line of Edge of Breakup, where the Mark III is kind of like classic rock. You know what I mean? And I think it's more versatile because, like you said, you can back the gain down a little bit, hit it with a pedal, and get edge of breakup plus two, or whatever you want to do with that, and create a pedal platform out of it. Which is, I'm an options guy, so I'll always say, give me too much. I'd rather have too much than not enough, because you can always back it down. But once you reach the top of something and it's still not enough for you, you're kind of screwed. You're kind of like,
Yeah.
well, that's all it has. And like I said, too much is always better than not enough for me.
I think that green channel is what truly makes the Mark III just a beast of an amp, and makes it such a workhorse, such a flexible
Yeah.
thing. That you can really you can do so many different styles with it.
And that's the flexibility I like. That's what I look for. So when people say, "Oh, this amp's so versatile because it's got 4 channels," and it's like, yeah, but only one works for me. It's like, I'm not a metal / classic rock / jazz / I don't know what the hell you want to call it player. You know what I mean? I want 4 channels that fit within the realm of music that I play, but they're versatile enough where I can dial them up or down to suit my tastes or other people's tastes within those realms. And again, I just like, if you want an amp that's got an edge of breakup channel on it, but also a high gain or a couple high gain channels, it just seems like one of these things doesn't belong here.
Yeah.
The whole Sesame Street things. I mean, because people that play high gain amps typically will not ever use edge of breakup stuff. It's just, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Comment below if you disagree with that. But I've never in my life played an edge of breakup channel and liked it. It's always been like, what do I even do with this? It just doesn't work for me.
See, I do like some edge of breakup things, because I'm not like a metal player. I love metal,
Yeah.
but like I'm a rhythm guitar player,
Yeah.
and a songwriter. So my approach is really, today I might be writing more of a helmet type, sludgier, dropsy riff, and then tomorrow, I'm inspired to write like a Megadeth type, thrashier riff,
Mhm.
and then a couple days later, I may come up with a riff that sounds more indie alternative rock, and you can definitely pull that off with the Mark II.
Mhm.
But even for me, the green channel on the Mark II lacks the amount of gain that I would like, because
Yeah.
the one thing with the Mark II version of the green channel is that as you get that gain knob higher, the higher it goes, it actually is like a semi like fuzz type of gain.
Okay.
So you can actually crank the gain on the Mark II version, and with no overdrive in front of it, and get more of like a fuzzier, like fuzz type tone, almost to the point where, if you didn't have like a big muff and you needed that fuzz tone, you could just crank the hell out of that, and you could get that. They went in a completely different direction, in my opinion, with the
Yeah.
Mark III,
Yeah.
and it was more of, it wasn't just a matter of, well, we're just going to put more gain on it. It really is a revoicing, to the point where if you, like someone like me who's on the fence about really want to, do I really feel the need to upgrade or get the Mark III,
Yeah.
that green channel alone is like, okay, yeah, they revoiced the purple and the red, but that green channel is like another channel.
Yeah.
It's
it
just a
is.
completely different channel to me.
Yep, and again, it's a channel that we would use. There's times that even a guy like me who likes just, I want the amp to be pretty much set on fire and have gasoline dumped
Right.
all over it. That's how I like my amps. But even someone like myself, especially in a mellow part of a song where there's like a breakdown, instead of rolling my volume knob back, I'll actually switch to the green channel and keep that fullness of my guitar, and just riff and do some cool stuff to have that full chunky kind of feel for the riffs that fit the kind of style of music that I play, and I would feel more confident with it, because every time I roll my volume back, I always feel like, it's like my batteries are dead or something in my guitar. It just doesn't feel right for me. I'm one of those players that I need everything to feel very supportive, and I want to feel very confident when I play. And that channel, the green channel on the Mark III, gives me that. It just gives me whatever I need that'll fit that type of playing without having to sacrifice tone on my guitar. Because anytime you roll your volume back, I mean, for this is just my opinion. Other people might disagree with me, but I feel like the guitar sounds kind of weak and choked. I want something that's full and chunky but mellow, and that green channel gives me that, and I just feel better playing it. It sounds better in my opinion. So it's the perfect roll your volume back channel without rolling your volume back. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And it doesn't just sound like the purple channel or the red channel with less gain. It truly is a different thing. It has its own character to it. It's not just, a light version of the two high gain channels.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to be fair, the Mark II, it's the same thing. That green channel is a completely different thing. It's got its own thing, which to me it's just great that when they came out with the Mark III, they're like, it sounded to me like they said, let's have some fun with this channel. Let's do something different. Let's go in a different direction.
Yep.
Because there were country dudes playing the Mark II, using that amp for things other than hard rock metal stuff. Yeah. I feel like this one here is meant for us.
Yeah, exactly. It's an amp meant for guys who like metal and rock, and it covers all that. So for me, it's kind of like they tweaked the purple and red channels, but they overhauled the green channel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what it's like. And I love what they did with all of the channels. I'm really happy with it. It sounds freaking amazing. This is the versatility that works for people like us.
Yeah.
When we get an amplifier. I mean, we want that kind of versatility. All right, so now let's go ahead and kick on the overdrive pedal for the green channel and just go back and forth so that you can see what how they compare, because some people might want to hear the edge of breakup with the pedal pushing it and see how that compares with the green channel on the Mark III that has more gain. So let's just go ahead and do that real quick, starting with the Mark II. So real quick, differences with the overdrive pedal on between the green channels.
I think it shows that you definitely can push that green channel on the Mark II with an overdrive, and you can get more out of it.
Yep,
you definitely can. It has some muscle behind it. It's got some girth to it,
Yeah.
Little bit more honky or a little bit throatier,
Mm-hmm.
When you put the overdrive on the green channel for the Mark III, it almost like tried to push it back into that metal territory again, where on the Mark II it's kind of like, hey, this is a little bit dirtier than a clean channel. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? I'll give you some.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to give you everything. Where this one was just like, all right, you win. Take it.
And it was cool how chunky it was on the Mark III too. It was that compression, I think, and that it just had that chunkiness to it that I really liked as well. It sounded great. I mean, they both sounded great, so it really depends on what you like, but I think both of us prefer the green channel on the Mark III with or without the overdrive pedal. It's just more usable for us. So I guess that's probably the best way to sum it up, is it's more usable, for people who play the style of music that we do, because we want that aggression and that fullness and that gain. It just works better for us. So again, depending on your taste, you'll pick one over the other.